Hey everybody, and welcome back to the board meeting. Today we're doing another R&R episode, our bi-monthly reviews and ratings episode, reviewing and rating all of the different games I've played in the past 2 weeks with friends, family, and even solo. These past 2 weeks I've played 27 different games, but we're only talking about 11 of them today because the other 16 I've either talked about in a previous R&R episode or I have some future plans for a specific video later on. With that being said, let's jump into our first game, Herbaceous Pocket Edition. Herbaceous Pocket Edition is the pocket-sized version of Herbaceous, which itself isn't that large of a game either. Herbaceous is kind of this push-your-luck game where you'll be trying to collect different types of sets of herbs to place in your 4 jars. On your turn, you draw a card and either place it in the community cards or your personal cards. The next card you draw must be placed in the place you didn't place the previous card. You can use the cards in the community area as well as your personal area to fill your jars up. I thought this was just an okay game as a multiplayer game, giving it a 6 rating, but if you enjoy very fast, very simple solo games, this would be a solo game that you may want to try out, as I did like it much better as a solo experience, giving it a 7 solo rating. It is a very zen-like solo game. If you're looking for solo games to kind of wind down at night, this could be your cup of tea. Going to our second game, Hey, That's My Fish. Hey, That's My Fish is a simple filler game. You will get control of a certain amount of penguins of a color, depending on player count. On your turns, you move your penguin in a straight line to another tile. The tile you were on disappears and goes into your scoring pile. All the tiles have different numbers of fish printed on them. Players take turns going back and forth until there are no more moves for the penguins and they have fallen off of the ice tiles and into the water. Highest points of fishes wins. For being such a simple game, I have always enjoyed this game, giving it a 7 rating. Not sure what has me liking this game so much, but it's just a cute game. Now going from fish to cats, let's check out the Isle of Cats. The Isle of Cats is a tile drafting game involving polyomino-shaped cat pieces. At the beginning of each round, you'll be drafting cards which will help you score more points, draft cat tiles, or give you just some special abilities. You have to decide which cards to keep, which then you will have to pay for in Fish, and then you will start buying these cat tiles and placing them around your board, covering different spaces. How you place these cats and what family of cats they belong to will determine how you score points at the end of the game, along with any point cards you have drafted earlier. This game sat on my shelf for close to a year before I broke this game out finally, but I did end up really enjoying this game. I give it an 8 rating and have only played it a couple times, so I'll definitely be playing this a few more times really soon. Also, had I played this when I made my top games of 2019, this would have had a chance of making that list actually. Meow, let's keep going with Disney's Jungle Cruise. Disney's Jungle Cruise is a race game with the new Disney movie IP attached to it. You'll be rolling dice to determine how far along the river you travel, and then you will encounter some bad situations which will make you lose cargo and people that are stacked onto your boat. You will gain people back and goods through a few different ways, but ultimately you will be constantly swapping goods and passengers out throughout the game. I am not a fan of this game. I give it a 4.5 rating and is just one really big luck fest of a game that I didn't really find enjoyable because it just comes down to the luck of the draw and rolling dice. So even though I can't recommend this game, I can recommend the new movie, as my son and I did enjoy the movie actually. Let's move on to hopefully a better game now in Tiny Epic Defenders. Tiny Epic Defenders is a fantasy-themed tower defense cooperative game. There are several location cards that will make up your board, and each of these locations will have a certain amount of health, along with your central location, which also has health. And you lose the game if your home location gets destroyed. How rounds will go, cards will flip that will determine which locations are being hit. There are cards that, when flipped, will give players actions, which they can then go and fix these damages from spots and do various things. If you survive so long, you end up versing a big bad guy at the end, and if you can beat it before your home gets destroyed, you win. I thought this was a decent game, especially for a Tiny Epic game, which I'm usually not a huge fan of. I'm giving this game a 6.5 rating. The only thing that I didn't like much is that this game starts off very slow. But it is a nice solo game if that does interest you. Keeping it going now by checking out Guillotine. Guillotine is a very silly, light card game. You have a row of nobles that are headed to the guillotine, and these nobles have varying points on them. On your turn, you optionally can play an action card from your hand, which will give you some ability and maybe change the order of the nobles. Then you kill the noble that's closest to the guillotine and add them to your scoring pile, and hopefully it is worth a load of points for you. This is a very simple game, and my group has really been enjoying this older game lately. I give it a 7.5 rating, and is just a really fun, no-brain game that will have most people laughing pretty good from it. Let's move on to the next game now with Fantastic Factories. Fantastic Factories is a simple dice worker placement game about building different structures with resources. You are going to be rolling dice and placing those dice on 3 different spots for you at the beginning of the game, which will help you collect different resources. Throughout the game, you will be spending those resources to purchase buildings, and these buildings will give you endgame points along with some kind of ability, or even another place to put your dice to take that action. I had heard really good things about this game, and I absolutely love dice worker placement games, so I had very high expectations for this one. The problem for me is that this was about 3 times simpler than I was expecting. And so maybe I was expecting something completely different when I started, but it really didn't sing with me too much. I give it a 6 rating, which isn't horrible, but when I'm talking about taking out a dice placement game, this one is going to have a pretty hard time competing with some other games in this genre that I adore. Moving on to a card game now in Diamonds. Diamonds is a trick-taking game with a few twists in it. You will have 4 suits of cards, and players will be trying to win tricks like a normal trick-taking game. If you can play a card of the lead suit, you must. If you don't have that suit, you play a different suit, and depending on which suit you played, you get that suit's special ability. Also, the player who wins the trick will get the winning suit's special ability. All of these abilities have something to do with gathering up these gems and putting them in front of you or placing them behind this vault, which is a secret to other players. At the end of 6 rounds, players get points for all of the gems in front of them and double points for all the gems in their secret vault. This is a rather simple trick-taking game that I did enjoy. I will give this game a 7 rating and will be a game I break out if I want to show someone new to the trick-taking genre. Checking out now, Age of Civilization. Age of Civilization is a worker placement civilization building game packed into this tiny little box. You will be taking turns each round placing out workers, gathering resources, moving up research tracks, building different wonders, and gathering up victory points. I played this game a few times last week, and it is a very fast game once you get the rhythm of the game down. I'll give this game a 6.5 rating, and it really just feels like it should be part of the Tiny Epic game series of trying to put a big box game into a card-sized game box. There isn't a ton of meat on this game, but what there is a huge amount of variability with the different variable ways to play this game. Keeping it moving now with Space Base. Space Base is a dice-throwing, rocket-collecting, engine-building game. In this game, the active player will roll the dice and gain whatever reward they get for those dice for those rocket cards that they have. Then they can purchase an upgrade card to add to their home base. What's really great about this game is that the other non-active players also receive bonuses for the other players' rolls. And the more upgrades players get, the better rewards they will start getting on their turns as well as other players' turns, until you are just getting massive amounts of money and points each turn. It is one of those games that the more I've played it, the more and more I've really started to enjoy it. I rate this game an 8.5, and I always have a good time when this one gets broken out. Moving on to our last game of the week, Paperback. Paperback is a Scrabble-esque deck building game. Players will be buying new letters to add into their decks, and each turn you draw 5 cards and try to make words out of it, which will give you buying power to purchase new cards to add to your deck. Some letter cards will give you certain special powers and abilities to aid you. This is a neat idea of a game, and a strong recommendation for anyone who really likes word games or Scrabble. I think it's neat, but I'm not really sure how often I would actually pull it off my shelf unless I wanted to show a specific person. I give it a 7 rating, and I have a few specific people in mind I want to show this to that could probably be one of their favorite games of all time. And that will wrap up today's R&R episode. Have you guys played any of these games I talked about today? Did you agree or disagree with what I felt about these games? No big deal either way. Just comment below to let me know. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe to see more weekly content from me, Shane, at the board meeting in the future. I hope you all have an amazing day. Take care, everyone.